After that 80-hour bloodbath at Nairobi's Westgate Mall, Somalia's Al-Shabaab militia quick to claim responsibility as the siege unfolded. But as investigators comb the rubble for bodies and clues, allegations of careful planning, foreign recruits putting the spotlight on jihadist recruitment grounds that stretch as far away as Minnesota, Sweden, and the UK, where the press has been speculating over the whereabouts of the so-called White Widow, whose husband was one of the 2007 London Underground attackers. We're also going to look at what comes next for Kenya, whose forces are among African peacekeepers battling the Al-Shabaab militia inside Somalia, and its recently elected president, the West putting aside Uhuru Kenyatta's indictment at the International Criminal Court to support a leader of a nation reeling from its worst such attack since 1998 and the bombing of the U.S. Embassy in Nairobi, and Uhuru Kenyatta, who personally lost a nephew in the Westgate Mall. Today, in the France 24 debate, what we know and the way forward for Kenya and its president. With us to talk about it from Nairobi, she's covering the story for us, France 24's Leela JACINTO. Also joining us here in the studio, Peter GUITAO, student at the French Political Science Institute, Sciences Po, risk consultant Jean-Charles Brisard, welcome back to the debate. And from Newburgh, New York, former FBI Special Agent Clinton Watts. He's now at George Washington University's Homeland Security Policy Institute. Thank you for being with us. The France 24 debate, where you can always join the conversation, and you have on Facebook and Twitter our hashtag F24Debate. Unanswered questions indeed. Before we go to our panel, well, let's spell some of them out in this report prepared by Catherine Clifford.
A lot of speculation, but little concrete information, as Kenyans struggle to come to terms with the gruesome four-day attack on the Westgate shopping mall. Many, like this Nairobi resident, want answers.
All we're being told is some of the attackers are dead and others have been arrested. We want proper investigations and for the truth to be told. We should not start blaming people without knowing the truth.
Combing through the wreckage, investigators hope to discover just how an attack like this could happen and whether the militants had help from inside the mall.
I believe this commando unit has been in place for months, put there by Al-Shabaab and their affiliates Al-Qaeda. They were in Nairobi or Mombasa and rented headquarters, stockpiled weapons, arranged for other members to arrive. And they were starting to work towards these goals, and that's why they were so capable of carrying out this operation.
Another murky area, just who's behind the siege. Islamist group Al-Shabab quickly claimed the attack, but the militants' nationalities remain unknown. The government said that foreign fighters were present, but gave no direct information on the attackers' identities.
We want to request the public and the international community to allow the forensic undertaking to determine the exact identity of the terrorists.
As these questions linger, the investigation gets underway. Meanwhile, Kenya's stepping up security in its major cities.
Leela JACINTO in Nairobi, you were at the press conference by the Interior Minister. Any more word than what we just heard on the identity of the attackers and their accomplices?
You know, Francois, I'm standing here not far from the Westgate shopping mall. The press has been here for the past few nights. It's a sealed-off site, and the press conference was right here at this corner. And there have been so many questions and really no answers. The purpose of the press conference by the Interior Minister today was to say that, in a sense, the investigation has now moved into a forensic audit phase, but he could not confirm many of the reports that have been circulating, including were there foreign nationals among the attackers. None of this he could provide any confirmation, and there have been contradictory reports coming from Kenyan government officials. So at this stage we have many questions, very few answers.
5 attackers, said Kenya's president on Tuesday. Did he stand by that number?
Even those figures are changing. The Kenyan president said 67 civilians and security officials were killed in the attack. However, 3 floors of the shopping mall have collapsed, and there are believed to be several bodies in the rubble. Now, we do not know if they are the bodies of the attackers or the bodies of the civilians. The Interior Minister today said that, in fact, the number of civilians in the rubble is very insignificant, but no official confirmation that the death toll has mounted. And of course, with regards to the attackers, President Kenyatta said that 5 attackers were killed, but we've also been hearing reports that there were about a dozen attackers. So, where are the other attackers? There were some reports that some of them actually slipped out, on the first day of the siege as shoppers were getting out of the mall. So this investigation has to cover a lot now.
All right, Jean-Charles Brisard, the siege lasted 80 hours. What's your gut feeling? 80 hours? How many people do you need to hold a place like the Westgate shopping mall for 80 hours? And how do you do it?
Obviously, a lot of resources. I mean, they have chosen to carry out this assault for maximum impact with a heavy armed assault. They had explosive devices, RPGs, various military guns, and obviously assault rifles also. And plus, we also had a long assault, as you said. They choose themselves to make it last so long. So that means they wanted to attract the attention of world media on their assault, on this action.
Clinton Watts, as we said at the top, Al-Shabaab claiming responsibility. When you look at the fact that, as Jean-Charles Brisard said, they were successful in making the siege last for so long, do you think Al-Shabaab masterminded this?
Yes, there are a few reasons why I think that. One, Al-Shabaab has conducted similar attacks like this in Mogadishu. Over the past 6 months, they've conducted a lot of terrorist attacks against Somali government and UN facilities in Mogadishu. And they use a combination of either suicide bombings or attack squads, which is similar to what we saw here in Nairobi. And this sort of planning has been seen in other places by Shabab. So I'm not surprised that they've taken credit for it in any way. And they have threatened for many, many years to be, at least the past 18 months, to conduct attacks outside of Somalia and on the Kenyan state.
When you look at it, Peter GUITAO, and you think you've been to the Westgate shopping mall, what's your reaction to how this siege could last this long?
I think the fact that it lasted this long is in itself evidence that the Al-Shabaab wanted, of course, to mediatize, wanted this mediatized, and that they wanted to try and show that they are strong. But in real sense, of course, when you look at the facts, they're not as strong. They were able to be pushed out of Somalia. But it's a sad affair, and I think of course the Kenyan government says that it's under control, and I believe it is. But the fact that it lasted this long, it just shows that they wanted it mediatized, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they are strong as they seem to be saying that they are.
The parallels being drawn, of course, with the Mumbai attacks, which lasted for more than 100 hours. Leela, JACINTO, we have this tweet from Meg Mumbai. Hope things have improved in Kenya by now. All my heart for those who lost their lives. May they be in peace. Leela, you've written about this on France24.com. The differences and the similarities between the Mumbai attacks.
Very many similarities. In fact, to go back to what you were talking about is, how many militants does it take to hold a siege for so long? The answer is not that many. It just depends on how well armed they are. There were a handful of militants who held the Taj Hotel in Mumbai siege. Coming back to your similarities and differences, very many similarities between the two attacks, I have to say. In terms of the target choice, high-profile locations where where local elites and internationals hang out, full of civilians, so there's plenty of room for hostage takings. Also the threat coming from across the border. The Indian state, the Indian government blames a militant group in Pakistan for the Mumbai 2008 attacks, and the attack in Kenya came from across the border, Somalia. So a lot of, and also, in some respects, also the official responses that we've been seeing over the past few days, with Kenyan officials saying everything is under control. We've entered into the final stages of the operation, and it went on for 2 more days after that. So, lessons can possibly be learned from these 2 attacks. But in the end, this is also very specific to Kenya. It also, we need to look at, where is Shabab? How did it get, to the stage where, this is a spectacular attack. You're absolutely right. This was conducted in Mogadishu before, but now they have crossed the border into the commercial hub of East Africa. So we need to examine that. We also need to examine what sort of local complicity and support they got in Kenya. Were there any, local jihadi groups that supported them? Because remember, jihadi groups, they can fight with each other, they can fight outside of each other, but they share expertise and skills.
Share expertise and skills, and that brings us to Clinton Watts. What the article that you wrote for Foreign Policy, you wondered the fact that this attack is happening now. Isn't it? You were wondering if it's not a little bit the death throw of the Al-Shabaab. You pointed to divisions over the fact that they've, I guess, merged their label. Is that the right term with Al-Qaeda?
Well, there are 3 things that have happened. First, when they had their merger with Al-Qaeda in 2011, some saw this as the group was getting stronger at that point, but it actually turned out to be a tipping point where Shabab started its decline. The merger was forced by the emir of Al-Shabaab, a guy that goes by one of many names, but one is Ahmad Godane. Godane had forced this merger on the sub-leaders of Shabab to sort of shore up his support and take command of the organization amongst many clan leaders that had also aligned with Al-Shabaab. And this led to several different things. 1, a lot of defections, and 2, a rift between the foreign fighters from the US, Canada, Europe that had gone to Somalia and joined Al-Shabaab. The most notorious one being a guy named Omar Hamami, who's from Alabama in the United States, who broke publicly with him and kept publishing YouTube and actually Twitter conversations where he said he was being hunted by Al-Shabaab's leadership.
And we can, in fact, Clinton, at this point, show a video of a clip from one of those YouTube videos where he spells out quite clearly that he had broken with Al-Shabaab.
To whomever it may reach, from the Muslims, from Al-Munsur al-Ameriki, I record this message today because I feel that my life may be endangered by Harb Shabab Mujahideen due to some differences that occurred between us regarding matters of the Sharia and matters of strategy.
Jean-Charles Brisard, that brings us to the question of the timing of this attack. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, as it has been said in the past, the Al-Shabaab was basically today a weak movement in its hometown of in Somalia. It was also divided, and finally the hardliners, led by Godane, won because they succeeded in imposing a hardline and the Al-Qaeda perspective on their own jihad. So it might look as a last resort, this type of massive assault from the hardliners to exist, because basically on their country in Somalia, they've been pushed out almost, and so this is probably a diversion for them, or a try to exist through the Kenyan borders.
A lot of emotion on Twitter from you. One person from the United States tweeting to us, how sure are we that what happened to Kenya will never happen to us? I guess you could put the same question to here in France.
Yes, until now we were looking at the consequences of people, French people especially, traveling and others, European, traveling to conflict zones and coming back in their country after have been trained, etc., and locally, and the consequences on our ground. Now what we see is people from outside, I mean, until it's confirmed by the investigation, but people from our countries committing those attacks abroad. So it marks for me the existence of a global jihad where there's no more borders for these fighters.
A global jihad, which sparks this comment, where are we heading? Why this madness? These and many questions are all that we ask. Clinton Watts, you heard Leela JACINTO say that in the case of Mumbai, it may be global jihad, but in the case of Mumbai, you don't need many people to cause a lot of mayhem.
No, and you can really combine that by sort of multiplying your force by using sort of insider access. And it appears, in the case of Nairobi, although it's not definitively been figured out yet, it appears in the case of Nairobi that they had some sort of insiders in the mall that helped them facilitate this attack, possibly move crew-served weapons into that facility in advance and gain access to that facility. And so that really tells you that beyond the attackers that were actually in the mall, there's likely a base of popular support in Nairobi and in Kenya in general for Al-Shabaab. Eastleigh, which is a Somali diaspora community, which has lots of refugees that have moved out of southern Somalia since the Kenyan forces invaded, is a very easy place for Al-Shabaab to facilitate this kind of operation. Likewise, there's been a lot of tension between Kenyan Muslims in recent years and with the central state related to what would be considered the global war on terror. So it is quite possible that this is representative of a larger base of support. While it only took a few people to execute the attack, there might be a lot of other people that helped facilitate it. Which brings up the question, Peter GUITAO, of the backlash for Somalis, be they refugees or Kenyans who are ethnic Somalis. We know that they're the majority in the northeastern province near the border there. There's a huge Somali community in Nairobi itself. Is there going to be a big backlash? I don't think so, because if you look at the history of Kenya, there's not been any conflict between Christians and Muslims. Well, not as pronounced as there would have been in terms of ethnic alliances. I do not think that this will be interpreted as a sort of Muslim-Christian sort of conflict, because I have lived in Kenya and I have seen that there's a lot of peace actually between the two. I don't think there'll be a backlash towards the people who live in northeastern and towards those who are Muslims themselves, but there may be a backlash by the government towards trying to exterminate once and for all the Al-Shabaab menace. Leela JACINTO, final thought on this before we go to the break?
Well, with the Somali community in Nairobi, for instance, I can tell you that they are very afraid of a backlash, and there are long-standing grievances of the community in the city, and along the coast we've had for decades sort of Muslim Islamist groups who have called for all sorts of things, the range of things from Sharia law, that sort of stuff. So Kenyans are united. This attack has definitely brought them together, but there are problems. Kenya has been home to a large community of Somali immigrants. It's home to the world's largest refugee camp in the border in Garissa, Dadaab. So for now, we haven't seen any backlash, but definitely the Somali community is afraid of one.
And we're going to continue to talk about this when we come back. You're watching the France 24 debate.